I'm Jerome Davis. I'm the Artistic Director of Burning Coal Theater Company. I'd like to welcome you to a discussion that we're going to have today on the discussion of immigration that's happening in the United States and around the world. To my right is Claude Bastian from International Focus and Scott Phillips from the U.S. Committee for Refugees and Immigrants. Welcome both.
Thank you.
So we're all working together on a sort of a loosely joined together project. And the first part of that project that's happening, Claude, you're involved with. Could you tell us a little bit about the project that you're going to be doing over at the Museum of Art?
I can, yes. It's coming up in October, and it is a film series, a mini film festival actually, around, again, the immigrant and refugee experience. And what we've done is pull together 11 different shorts and one feature film from a variety of viewpoints, telling the story of different refugees and immigrants. And they might be people who are new to the country or people who've been established here for a while, different areas in the world, and just different takes on what it means to be immigrant and what it means to be refugee.
What are the dates of that festival?
That'll be October 2nd, 9th, and 16th at
Three
the Museum of Art.
consecutive Wednesdays, I believe.
That's right.
And does one go through your website to get tickets, or how does one get tickets for it?
That's right. It's internationalfocus.org/film.
Very good. And Scott, your organization works on a daily basis with the immigrants and refugees. Can you tell us a little bit about your organization and what you do there?
So the U.S. Committee for Refugees and Immigrants, we'll shorten it to USCRI, we provide direct services and support to refugees and immigrants that are coming into North Carolina. This covers a wide range, all the way from establishing houses, getting basic housing, getting basic needs, and also helping people to get employment, getting people enrolled in school, educational pathways, etc. We cover everything. But one of the most critical parts of what we do beyond the direct service is working with the community to raise awareness about the issues and to also ensure that North Carolina is continuing to be a welcome community. And I think this film festival that we're working on with International Focus is a great way for us to do that, because the stories that we're telling, yes, they are definitely an immigrant perspective, a refugee perspective, but a lot of the feelings, a lot of the emotion built into these movies is something that's going to resonate with everybody. Because I can talk numbers all day. I can tell you numbers of how many people are coming, how they're contributing to the economy, how well they're doing in school, etc. But at the end of the day, we're talking about people. We're talking about humans. And I think by working to humanize the experience, I think everybody here can see themselves in this group of people and therefore understand the process a little bit more of coming here.
And that ties back to what Burning Coal is doing in all of this. We have a play opening on October 10th that will run for 3 weeks through the 27th. It's going to be done at the Contemporary Art Museum in downtown Raleigh. The play is called The Container, and it's an hour-long play, and it will be set inside a shipping container, which is one of the methods that some of the human traffickers use to get people from these sometimes war-torn countries into Western countries. This is about Europe, so it's not exactly an apples-to-apples comparison with what's happening on the southern border of the United States, but it's close enough, I think, and the audience will be sitting in the container for that hour with the refugees and listening to their stories unfold. So I think that's an effort to do some of the same kind of thing that the festival is doing, which is to humanize these people, and in the case of the container, really let the audience have just a smidgen of understanding of the physical realities of that experience, being locked up with a group of people you don't know, you've never met, being under the control and at the mercy of people you've never met and who may be, kind of shady characters. You really don't know. You don't know where you are, you don't know what time it is, you don't know when you will finish your journey, and you don't know where you will be when you finish the journey. And all of those things are brought out in the play, the 1 hour play. That one is by the British playwright Claire Bailey, whose work we've done before, and it will be a very visceral experience, which is something we like to do at Burning Coal. I'm curious, Claude, you at International Focus, you have worked on this topic before, or is this a first time experience for you?
Well, not in the way that we're working on it now with the film festival. We do work extensively with immigrants, mostly through the International Festival of Raleigh, which most people are familiar with,
Yes.
where we partner with the international communities in the Triangle to produce the festival and showcase their art and their culture. And we have a number of different projects where we work with incoming visitors from around the world, but then also, again, the communities who are here. So to answer your question, yes, but this film festival, this Home is Distant Shores, is the first time that we're actually looking at that experience in a more raw sense, and in comparison with the container, with what Burning Coal and Cam are doing, to really try and portray that experience to somebody who may not, be first generation, who may not have thought about what that means before, and to think themselves into that refugee or that immigrant's personal experience.
We're all immigrants if you go back far enough in our
That's
lineage.
right.
And I imagine that some of the same experiences were held, certainly the first European travelers to North America and to Central and South America would have had the experience of not knowing where they were going or what they were going to meet when they got there, who was going to be there to meet them. So this is a modern phenomenon, but it also goes back to the very beginnings of the Western immigration, if you will, to this part of the world. When she approached you, Scott, to participate in this project, was that a first for you? Had you thought of using the arts in this way?
We had always thought about it and never quite had the wherewithal to follow through with it, and I don't even know how we.
I think we connected at a meeting, but also want to mention Abhi Rao, who is very instrumental in this. He's a local filmmaker, and he has been tremendous in gathering the different films and communicating with the filmmakers, and he's really spurred us on as well to get it done. So he's our third silent partner. He's not here today, but he deserves a lot of the credit also.
Very good.
But I think an interesting thing, kind of going back to some of the ideas from the container and how it meshes well with what we're doing, is that idea of home and leaving home.
Yeah.
And thinking about living in a container for X number of days, like what would be happening to make you make that decision, to have you make that decision. And while our films are not necessarily focused on the poor immigrants making this horrible journey, there are some that look at the journey side of things. But there's also that sense of understanding what you left behind and what you're finding here. Because there's a lot of statements about home and what home is. And do you ever cease to ever have your home back home? And do you establish this as a new home? And I think it's a fascinating topic to delve into when we start to think about identity issues and how are people being categorized, and are there good immigrants and bad immigrants, which I hear that a lot of times.
And is the idea that the good immigrants are the ones who want to discard their past and absorb themselves into the Western culture? Is that the idea?
I hear a little bit of both. It's also, I hear around the reasons people are coming and the status they're coming with. There's a socioeconomic component to it. Right. If you come with a higher level degree and stuff like that, you're a good immigrant. If you're coming to pick blueberries, which are critically important for North Carolina, is
have them every morning for breakfast.
It's not seen as important.
Right.
And I think just kind of breaking that down and talking about, well, why would anybody leave home? It's because home is dangerous. It's because,
Right.
It takes a lot to make that move.
Yeah. And of course, if we think about it from our own standpoint, what would it take to get us to uproot and move away from the United States? It would take it's almost impossible for me to imagine what it would take to cause that. And yet those circumstances have occurred in the container. The three peoples who are represented in the container are Afghanistan refugees, which is an obvious story that we all understand after 9/11. and the Taliban, but we also have Somalia, which has been heavily torn by fighting between Western-backed militias and Muslim extremist groups, but also the Kurdish refugees that moved from northern Iraq into southern Turkey in the early 90s when Saddam Hussein was driven back into his country. The United States had told the Kurds that if they rose up against Saddam, that they would back them, and then they cut a deal with Saddam that if he would get out of Kuwait, they would leave him alone in his own country. And so the Kurds found themselves being gassed. And when we hear those stories about the gassing of the Kurds, we never hear that entire story, right? We never hear the part where we had broke our word to them at the time. And so those people are part of the migration westward as well. And all three of those stories are represented in the container. Clodagh, I wanted to ask you a question, if you don't mind. When you hear about, and Scott, this may be something for you to interject on too, but when you hear people talking about immigrants taking jobs from Americans, American citizens, does that resonate to you at all? Do you guys know what the statistics are there? Is that an accurate argument, or is that an argument that's unfounded?
I think it's mostly unfounded. Any numbers that I've seen dispute that, and even a lot of recent ones. I think there was something lately in the Washington Post that looked at that, and I wish I had it here, but that's not the case. Number one, a lot of the lower immigrants that we were talking about, obviously they come in for agrarian jobs that aren't filled.
Stressful, physical, manual labor jobs that pay very little.
Exactly, and we're hearing a lot now from farmers, but also from industry with the different immigration policies that have been coming down the pike over the last year or so. That they're actually having problems now filling those positions and getting workers in to feed America basically, right, or to keep up with production. Also, there's a lot of evidence that shows the more varied the brain trust is, and what comes in, the more we can look at things in different ways, the better off we are as a society, socially and economically. So it's a good buzzword, I think, and it's used oftentimes as a scapegoat means to achieve something else, I think, a lot of times in political discussion, but the facts don't bear it out.
Right. Do you have more on that subject?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things we hear that a lot, that people are coming to take jobs, and we've not seen the evidence. You can probably dig and find some research, but I would question some of that research as being quite biased. I mean, I think it's an interesting thing when we kind of start slicing up the immigrant population from the big term immigrant down into smaller subsets of how people come here, why they come here, and which visa status they're coming in on, et cetera. And you start to see slight differences. But overall, like, through our refugee programs in our office, about 85% of the families that come in are fiscally self-sufficient after 180 days in country. They're putting money in the bank at that time. They are making $10.75 an hour, which is you're not going to get rich, but you're able to pay your rent and you're able to do well. And that's something that's very interesting. But one of the things too with refugees is that it's not a socioeconomic status. It is, we have doctors, lawyers, engineers, we have factory workers, we have farmers, we have people that have lived in a refugee camp for 25 years and have never held a job. Right. So we've got a wide range there when we're talking about it. And we've got, and she hates it, one of our clients hates it when I talk about her, but I'm going to talk about her, is she was an Iraqi doctor. Uh-huh. And she came here, and normally it takes a really long time to get recertified to be a doctor. Mm-hmm. And she is knocking it out of the park. And one of the fascinating things, and this goes to kind of like that idea of building that brain trust, is she said, we're like, how are you doing this? How are you, you're facing these challenges. She's like, I'm an Iraqi female that became a doctor. I faced a ton of challenges
you
over
ain't-
there.
you ain't seen
I'm-
challenges.
Yeah, so I've got this.
Yeah.
And that's great. When she becomes like able to practice, it's going to be an amazing add to the community here in Raleigh.
Right.
And we see that with a lot of people, and it's not just the people that are coming over to be doctors or the coder that we have as a refugee that's making, well over $100,000 a year
Right.
working in their field. It's also the people that are working jobs that basically we have people calling us, employers calling us, asking for more people to send them, and we don't have enough folks arriving
Right.
that are working those jobs and paying their rent, sending their kids to school, starting to make their life here in Raleigh, not just living in Raleigh as a resident and having an address, but living in Raleigh and becoming part of the community, finding out what there is, building relationships, building those social capital networks that are so critically important to integration.
It's always seemed like such a no-brainer to me that it's like if you try to paint a painting with only one color, you're going to not have a very interesting picture at the end of it. But if you use all the options, all the different colors, that painting's going to be more interesting, I think, and certainly more subtle and richer for everybody, not just for the new colors that have been added in at the last minute. So that's a bit of a strained metaphor, but perhaps that's a good place to end. Will you tell us one more time about the project and the dates and where people can get tickets, Claudia?
Absolutely, happy to. It's the Home is Distant Shores Film Festival. It'll be at the Museum of Art, October 2nd, 9th, and 16th. And for information on a listing of all of the films, we're actually going to match each evening up with a panel discussion afterwards, and the final evening will have a reception. And you can find all of that information along with the movies, times, everything, tickets at internationalfocus.org/film.
Very good. And Burning Coal's production of The Container by Claire Bailey will run at the Contemporary Art Museum in downtown Raleigh. That's 409 West Martin Street, October 10th through 27th. We only have 20 seats for each performance, so we're doing 2 performances a night, and on Sundays 2 in the afternoon. You can get more information at burningcoal.org, or you can give us a call at 919-834-4001. Thank you guys for joining us here today. We appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing the festival.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.